Hello guys, how are you? Hope you all are good. Welcome to my channel Sci-Fi X. Don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Enjoy the video.
They called it a dead ship, until a human turned it into a warship. The proximity alarm had been screaming for 11 seconds before anyone on the Galactic Coalition salvage station realized what they were looking at. Chief Engineer Dale Ruas was elbow deep in a coolant coupling when the alert hit. He pulled his arm out, wiped the blue fluid on his vest, and stared at the holographic display floating above the docking bay floor. The object tumbling through Sector 9 was roughly 600 meters long, dull gray and leaking plasma from 3 separate hull fractures. Coalition registry scans came back blank. Species identification returned a single word: unknown. Dale had been doing salvage work for 9 years. He knew what a dead ship looked like. He also knew something the rest of the station crew did not. He had seen this class of ship once before, in a photograph his grandfather kept in a locked box under his bed, next to a service medal and a handwritten letter in a language only 3 people alive could still read. He grabbed his kit bag and walked to the docking bay before anyone thought to stop him. Commander Vera Lynn, Station Operations Chief, caught him at the airlock. She was tall, composed, with the kind of stillness that came from commanding 12 alien crew members across 4 different atmospheric requirements for 6 years without losing her mind. She looked at his kit bag, then at his face. "You are not going over there alone," she said. "I am," Dale said. "And I need you to not log this approach for about 4 hours." She stared at him. "That ship is dead, Dale. The Veth survey team already ran a remote scan. No power, no life signs. Hull integrity at 18%. It is a hazard to station approach vectors and nothing else." "The Veth are wrong. The Veth have been doing deep salvage since before your species had written language." "I know." He keyed the airlock. "That is exactly why they are wrong." The tunnel between stations was cold and silent, and Dale moved through it the way he moved through every dangerous space, which was without stopping and without looking down. The dead ship filled the viewport at the far end like a wall of dark iron. Up close, the hull markings were not just damage. They were layered. Old repairs over older damage over something that looked almost like intentional scarring, a record of violence written in metal. He found the emergency access panel 14 meters from the primary airlock, 3rd panel from the dorsal seam. He found it because his grandfather had drawn it for him on a napkin in a hospital room 12 years ago. Hands shaking, voice steady. "So if you ever see this ship," his grandfather had said, "do not let them scrap it." Dale had asked why. His grandfather had smiled. "Because it is not dead. It is waiting." The panel opened on the first try. The air inside was stale but breathable, held by passive life support that should have failed decades ago. Dale's helmet sensors confirmed oxygen levels at 91%. Temperature at 4 degrees above zero. The corridor lights were off, but his torch cut clean through the dark. And what it lit up made him stop walking for the first time since he had left the station. The interior was not like any coalition ship he had ever boarded. The architecture was different, not alien different, not the organic curves of Veth design or the geometric rigidity of KLeth construction. This was purposeful. Angular where it needed to be, open where mass needed to move, every corridor a degree wider than coalition standard, every junction built for a crew that needed to run, your human standard, built for human bodies, human reaction times, human instincts. This was not a coalition ship. It had never been a coalition ship. He found the bridge 2 minutes later and stood in the doorway for a long moment looking at the command chair. It was bolted to a raised platform in the center of the room, facing a viewport the full width of the forward hull. 6 stations ringed it in a half circle. Every screen was dark, every surface was coated in 9 years of settled dust. Dale walked to the command console and opened his kit bag. He pulled out a power cell the size of his forearm, a secondary interface bridge, and a handwritten code sequence on a folded piece of paper that he had memorized but kept anyway, because his grandfather's handwriting was the last thing he had of the man. The Veth had scanned this ship and declared it dead, because the Veth scanned for power signatures they recognized. Coalition standard reactor output, ion drive frequencies, or communication band emissions. This ship did not run on any of those. Dale connected the interface bridge to the console port, typed the first sequence, waited. Nothing happened. He typed the second sequence. The console hummed. One light came on. Small, amber, at the bottom left corner of the main screen. Then another. Then a sound, low and resonant, moving through the floor up through his boots. A sound less like a machine waking and more like something breathing for the first time in a long time. The main screen flickered. Text appeared. Old formatting, narrow font, a typeface Dale recognized from archival databases of pre-coalition human engineering records. It read, "Command authentication required." Dale unfolded the paper, typed the final sequence. The ship answered. Every screen on the bridge lit simultaneously. The overhead lights came on at half power, warm and gold. As the hum in the floor deepened. Through the viewport, Dale watched the plasma leaking from the hull fractures slow, then stop, as automated repair systems he had not even known were there began closing wounds that the Veth survey team had written off as irreparable. A voice came from the ship's communication system, not synthesized, recorded. A human voice, male, older, carrying the particular flatness of someone who had said a thing so many times it had become a ritual. Authorization confirmed. Welcome back, Commander. Dale sat down in the command chair. It fit him like it had been built for him specifically, which it had not been, but which felt true in a way that made the back of his throat tight. His comm badge buzzed. Vera's voice. Dale, our sensors just registered a full power surge from the unknown vessel. Do you want to tell me what is happening over there? He looked at the screens around him. Weapons systems, navigation, propulsion architecture that made coalition drives look like something built by children with good intentions and limited materials. I found the ship, he said. I can see that. No. He ran his hand along the edge of the console. I found it. This is one of ours. Silence on the line. Then Vera said very carefully, Dale, humans have not had independent deep space-capable vessels in over 40 years. Yet the Coalition absorbed all registered human fleet assets when the integration treaty was signed. All registered ones, Dale said. Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. How big is it? She asked. Dale looked at the weapons manifest now, loading on the screen to his left. He read down the list once, then again, because the first read felt like a mistake. It was not a mistake. Big enough, he said. Tell the Veth survey team they were wrong. Tell them the ship is not dead. He leaned back in the command chair. Tell them it just needed the right person to wake it up. Outside the viewport, the hull fractures finished sealing themselves. The running lights came on, blue-white and steady, cutting through the dark of Sector 9 like something that had decided it was done waiting. The dead ship breathed. And Dale Ruiz, who had grown up on stories his grandfather refused to tell anyone else, put his hands on the console and started learning the language of a warship that had been sleeping for 9 years, waiting for someone who knew its name. The station crew knew something had changed the moment the power readings hit their boards. Keth, the senior Veth analyst, had 3 of his 6 sensory tendrils pressed flat against the monitoring console, which was the Veth equivalent of a human, going very still and very quiet. Vera stood behind him, arms crossed, watching the numbers climb. "That is not possible," Keth said. "You said it was dead," Vera said. "It was dead. Our scan was thorough, every spectrum, every known power signature." The tendrils pressed flatter. There was nothing. There is something now. Keth turned to look at her. His large amber eyes carried the particular expression Vera had learned, over 6 years of working with Veth, to identify as embarrassment processed through extreme intellectual discomfort. "Well, the power architecture is unlike anything in our database. The reactor signature does not match any recorded drive type. Coalition, independent or archived." "Because it is not coalition," Vera said. She had spent the 20 minutes since Dale's call reading every document she could access on pre-integration human fleet records. Most of them were sealed. Some were missing entirely. Gaps in the archival database that someone had removed cleanly and a long time ago. But she had found enough, and enough to understand why Dale's voice had sounded the way it did. She keyed her comm. "Dale, talk to me. What is your status?" His voice came back clear, no static, which meant the ship's internal communication system was running at full strength. "Working through the systems manifest. This thing is layered. There are at least 3 operational states I can identify, and I think there are more hidden under authentication locks I have not cracked yet." "Can you move it?" A pause. "Yes. Navigation is online. Drives are at 40% and climbing. Whoever mothballed this ship did not just park it. They left it in a low power preservation state. Everything is intact. Everything is functional." Vera looked at the viewport. The ship had stopped tumbling. It sat steady now, oriented, its running lights burning a steady blue-white against the sector dark. A ship that had been spinning dead through empty space 20 minutes ago was now sitting still like it owned the sector. "Oh, Dale," she said, "what is this ship?" Another pause. Longer. "My grandfather served on it," he said. "Before the integration, before the Coalition absorbed the human fleet. He was a drive systems engineer. He spent 11 years on this vessel." Vera waited. When the integration treaty was signed, the Coalition took registry of all human deep space vessels. Everyone that existed on paper. My grandfather always said there were ships that never made it onto paper. Off-record vessels. Built in private docks, funded outside official channels, crewed by volunteers who understood they would not be acknowledged. Dale's voice was steady, but something ran underneath it. Not quite pride, not quite grief. Something that lived in the space between the two. When the integration came, the crews dispersed. The ships were supposed to be scrapped or abandoned. Some were. This one was not. Keth made a sound, low and involuntary, which from a Veth meant genuine shock. He had pulled up the weapons manifest that was now transmitting from the ship's open system logs. Vera leaned over to read it. She read it twice. Then she understood why the ship had been kept off every official record that had ever existed. The Coalition had a weapons standardization treaty. Every vessel operating under Coalition registry carried defined armament classes, unregulated yield limits, pre-approved offensive and defensive systems. The treaty was 40 years old, carefully maintained, and considered one of the foundations of interspecies cooperation in the sector. This ship violated the treaty on 11 separate counts. Not because it carried illegal weapons, because it carried weapons no one had thought to make illegal yet, 40 years ago. Because no one outside a very small group of human engineers had known they were possible. "Sir Dale," Vera said carefully, "the weapons on that manifest—" "I know," he said. "If the Coalition sees this, I know. They will want to impound it, at minimum. There are treaty implications that go beyond anything I have authority to manage from this station." "I know, Vera." His voice had not changed. "That is why I need 4 hours." She pressed her fingers against the bridge of her nose. Vera Lynn had spent 6 years navigating the Coalition's administrative structure, under its species politics, its endless layers of protocol and precedent. She had been very good at it. She had been promoted twice. She had a commendation from the Caleth Directorate framed on her office wall. She looked at the ship outside the viewport, at its running lights, at the sealed hull fractures that should have taken a dry dock 6 weeks to repair, that the ship had sealed itself in under 20 minutes. 4 hours, she said. "Starting now." She turned to Keth. "The power surge was a false reading. Equipment malfunction on our end. Log it that way." Keth looked at her for a long moment. His tendrils had lifted from the console, which meant he was thinking rather than reacting. "The Veth do not falsify records," he said. "No," Vera agreed. "You do not. I am asking you to delay a log entry due to equipment uncertainty, which is within protocol when readings are anomalous and confirmation is pending." Another long moment. "When confirmation pending," Keth said. "I will note the anomaly required additional verification time." Vera nodded and went to find a chair, because her legs had decided this was a reasonable time to remind her that she was human and that adrenaline had a ceiling. On the ship, Dale had moved from the bridge to the engine section. The drives were massive, larger than the hull profile suggested they should be, which meant the engineering team had folded additional drive mass into the ship's internal structure in a way that made the external dimensions misleading. A scan of the hull would read a ship with moderate propulsion capacity. What was actually inside was something else entirely. He found the secondary drive core and stood looking at it with his torch for a full minute. His grandfather had described this once. Not the specifics, never the specifics, but the feeling of standing next to it. He had said it felt like standing next to something that had decided what it wanted to be and had not changed its mind. Dale knew that feeling now. He also knew he had maybe 3.5 hours before the 4-hour window closed, and 3 full drive systems, a weapons array, and a navigation mesh to bring to operational status. He pulled out his tools and got to work. He was good with machinery. He had always been good with machinery, better than any certification could quantify, or the way some people are good with languages or music. A fluency that came from somewhere below conscious learning. His grandfather had been the same way. His grandfather had also been the kind of man who kept secrets not out of shame, but out of patience, holding things carefully until the right moment arrived. Dale had never understood that until right now. He connected the first drive coupling and listened to the ship's power grid reroute to accommodate it. The ship was not passive, and it was not simply responding to commands. It was cooperating, adjusting, filling in gaps in his knowledge with its own operational logic, running sequences he had not initiated because they were the correct sequences and the ship knew it. His comm buzzed, a different frequency, station-wide, a voice he did not recognize, clipped, formal, carrying the particular cadence of Coalition administrative authority. "Attention unregistered vessel in Sector 9. This is Coordinator Dalen of the Coalition Transit Authority. You are operating an unregistered drive signature in a regulated sector. Power down immediately and prepare for inspection and impound processing." Dale looked up at the ceiling of the engine bay. He keyed his personal comm back to Vera's frequency. "How long until they can get a vessel here?" he asked. Vera's voice was tight. "Transit Authority keeps a patrol unit at the sector relay." 40 minutes, or maybe 50. Dale looked at the drive coupling in his hand, then at the 3 remaining drive cores that needed to come online. That is enough time, he said. Dale, how many patrol vessels does the Transit Authority run in this sector? A pause. 2, maybe 3 with the relay unit. And if those 3 needed to be somewhere else very urgently for about 6 hours. Silence. I am not hearing this, Vera said. Good, Dale said. No, because I am not saying it. He put the comm down and connected the second drive coupling. The ship hummed with something that was not quite gratitude, but was in the neighborhood. Outside, in Sector 9, the Transit Authority patrol unit had just changed course toward the station, running standard approach protocols, absolutely unaware of what was waiting for it in the dark. Dale worked faster. The patrol unit arrived in 38 minutes. Dale had the primary drives at 70%. The Transit Authority vessel was a Kaleth-built enforcement cruiser, flat and wide, designed more for administrative authority than actual combat. The kind of ship that relied on its registry and its comms to do most of its work. It broadcast its coalition ID codes on 3 frequencies simultaneously the moment it entered sensor range of the station, which was either confidence or habit. Dale had decided by now that with the Transit Authority, it was always habit. Coordinator Dalen's voice came through on the open channel again. Unregistered vessel, you have not complied with the order to power down. This is your final warning before enforcement action. Vera's voice came through on the private channel. Dale, they are powering weapons. What class? Standard enforcement array. Disabling yield. They want to take the ship intact. Dale had the secondary drives at 60%. The weapon systems had been at operational status for the last 22 minutes, and he had not touched them. Because he did not want to touch them. Because there was a version of this that did not require weapons, and he was committed to finding it. He keyed the ship's external comm for the first time. Coordinator Dallin, this is Dale Ruiz, salvage engineer, Coalition Station 11. I am the individual who boarded the unregistered vessel and restored its systems. A pause. Then Dalen's voice, more cautious now. Mr. Ruiz, you are aware that operating an unregistered drive signature in a regulated sector carries significant legal consequences. I am aware the ship's registration lapsed during an administrative gap in the Integration Treaty documentation period. Dale said. I am also aware that the original registration has never been formally voided. It was simply not renewed. There is a legal difference. Another pause. Longer. He could hear, faintly, the sound of someone on the patrol unit checking records they had not expected to need. The registration you are referencing, Dalen said carefully, if it exists, would predate coalition standardization protocols by 41 years, Dale said. Yes. Ships of that age require full compliance certification before they can operate in regulated space. Agreed. I am requesting a compliance review period of 30 days, as permitted under Coalition Salvage Code Section 14, Paragraph 9. The vessel is in active restoration status. The line went quiet. Dale used the quiet to bring the tertiary drive core to 40%. On his sensor board, he watched the patrol unit's weapons array go from active to standby. Not powered down. Standby. Which meant Dalen was on a secondary channel doing exactly what Dale had hoped, or which was talking to someone with more administrative authority about a situation that was now more complicated than a simple impound. Vera's voice, careful and quiet. How did you know about Section 14, Paragraph 9? My grandfather was very thorough, Dale said. He left you legal documentation for a ship he was not supposed to have been on. He left me everything I needed. The silence from the patrol unit stretched another 40 seconds. Then Dallin came back. Mr. Ruiz, a coalition administrative code does permit a 30-day compliance review period for vessels in active registered salvage restoration. However, the vessel will need to be confined to Sector 9 during that period and will be subject to weekly inspection visits. Understood and accepted, Dale said. Furthermore, given the unusual power signatures we are reading, a full systems disclosure will be required at the start of the review period. Of course. Another pause, when Dale could feel the coordinator trying to find the edge of this, the place where the legal courtesy ended and the enforcement action began. There was no edge. Dale had made sure there was no edge. Very well, Dalen said. Review period is logged. Station 11 will receive the formal documentation within the hour. The patrol unit powered its drives and began turning for the sector relay. Dale let out a breath he had not known he was holding. Vera's voice was somewhere between impressed and horrified. You baited them into a legal framework. I used an existing legal framework, Dale said. My grandfather marked it in his notes. He said if anyone ever found this ship and tried to take it, the answer was never a fight. It was a form. That man, Vera said, and did not finish the sentence. Dale did not need her to. He had 30 days. 30 days to bring the ship to full compliance, which was a real and genuine intention. Must it also happen to be enough time to finish what he had started? Because bringing a ship to coalition compliance standards from a pre-integration baseline required full systems testing, which required full systems operation, which required running every system at operational capacity to confirm it met the new standards. Every system, including the ones that had no coalition equivalent. He pulled up the weapons manifest again and started reading it with the specific attention of a man who intended to understand every line. Outside the viewport, the patrol unit shrank to a light, then nothing. The ship was quiet around him, running and warm and waiting. The first full systems test happened on day 4. Dale had spent 3 days mapping the ship's architecture. Not just the systems he knew about from his grandfather's notes, but the ones he found on his own, buried under authentication locks that yielded to him one by one as the ship apparently decided he was trustworthy enough to know more. He had stopped being surprised by the 3rd lock. Vera came aboard on the morning of day 4, which was the first time she had set foot on the ship. She stood in the main corridor for a moment just looking at it. It is bigger on the inside than it looks, she said. The hull geometry is deceptive by design, Dale said. The engineering team built the external profile to read as a mid-class transport. Everything structural is internal. Vera ran her hand along the corridor wall. Who built this? A team of about 40 engineers, according to my grandfather's notes. Working in a private facility on Kepler Station. They had backing from 3 separate human industrial concerns that were all listed under shell company names. Dale paused. He said they called themselves the Quiet Architects. That is either very humble or very arrogant. Both, Dale said. They were engineers. She followed him to the bridge. When she saw the full command layout, the 6 stations, the weapons board, the sensor mesh that was currently pulling data from every corner of Sector 9 and 3 sectors beyond it, she went very still. Dale, she said, what exactly are we testing today? Drive performance at full capacity, he said. Navigation precision at combat maneuvering speed, sensor range and resolution, and the defensive grid. The defensive grid. The ship has a full active defense system, layered. The outer layer is a standard deflection array. The inner two layers are something the Coalition has not classified yet because they do not know it exists. Vera turned to look at him. And you are going to test it. For compliance verification purposes, Dale said. I need to document its specifications. The look on her face was the look of someone choosing very deliberately not to ask the next obvious question. I am going to be in my office, she said. I am going to be reviewing administrative documents. That sounds like a good use of your time. She left. Dale sat in the command chair and started the test sequence. The drives came to full power in a sound that was less a roar and more a resolution, a deepening of the frequency that had been running under everything since the first day, arriving at something it had always been moving toward. The ship moved out of its Sector 9 position with a kind of precision that did not feel mechanical. The navigation system was anticipatory, reading Dale's inputs a fraction of a second before he completed them, which meant the response time was faster than should have been physically possible. He ran the first maneuvering sequence. The ship moved through it the way water moves through a curved channel, following the geometry naturally, without resistance. He ran the second sequence, faster. The ship matched it without strain. He ran the third sequence, which was not in any Coalition navigation manual because it was a pattern his grandfather had described as the hammer pattern, a close-range evasion and counter-thrust combination that required drive response faster than any Coalition standard vessel could manage, when the ship ran the hammer pattern cleanly. Dale sat back in the command chair and looked at the star field through the viewport. His grandfather had told him once, near the end, that the ship had a name. A real name, not the registry designation, not the hull number. A name the crew had given it. He had not told Dale what it was. He had said Dale would find it. Dale had been looking since the first day. He found it on day 4, after the test sequence, and in the oldest layer of the ship's memory core, buried under 40 years of dormancy, a single text entry in the crew manifest header. The name was Caleb's answer. He sat with that for a while. Then he opened a new log entry and began recording the test results, every specification, every performance figure, all of it clean and documented and ready for the compliance review. On day 9, the second thing happened. A ship came through the sector relay that was not a transit authority vessel, and not a Coalition patrol unit, and not anything with a registered transponder. It was moving at a speed that suggested it was not interested in stopping, and its heading put it on a direct intercept with the station. Dale was on the bridge when the sensors picked it up. He had 8 seconds before the ship's threat assessment system flagged it as hostile. He used 4 of them to call Vera. "We have an incoming contact," he said. "No transponder. Direct intercept vector. Speed is 2.4 times Coalition standard fast approach." Vera's voice came back with the kind of quiet that meant she was already running. "Identification?" The sensor mesh had been working on it since the first ping. It came back now with a partial match. Not a Coalition registry. Not any registered independent vessel class. The hull profile matched an archived record of a type that had not been seen in this sector in over 15 years. "Riven Raiders," Dale said. Silence on the line. Riven Raiders had not operated this far into Coalition territory in 15 years because 15 years ago, a Coalition fleet action had destroyed most of their operational capacity and pushed the remainder back to the outer rim. They operated now in low-traffic sectors, taking undefended targets, relying on speed and the assumption that no one in their target zone had the firepower to respond. The station had no offensive capability. 3 defense turrets, designed to handle debris and small hazards. Against a Riven Raider at speed, they would last about as long as it took to fire them. How long? Vera asked. Dale looked at the intercept calculation the ship had already run. 6 minutes. Coalition response time from the sector relay is 14. I know. Another silence. Oh, Dale? Vera said. I know, he said again. He pulled up the weapons board. The compliance review was on day 30. Today was day 9. He was not technically cleared for weapons operation. He was also the only thing between a Riven raider and a station with 230 crew members. He looked at the weapons manifest, then at the sensor feed tracking the incoming contact, its speed, its heading, and its absolute confidence that it was moving towards something that could not fight back. Dale Ruiz put his hands on the weapons console. Caleb's answer hummed beneath him, all its systems awake, all its patience used up. The dead ship that had never been dead moved to meet what was coming. And in Sector 9, for the first time in 41 years, it was not waiting anymore. The Riven ship did not slow down. As that was the first thing Dale logged in the incident record, he was already composing in the back of his mind. The part of his brain that was always filing things away, even when the front of it was calculating intercept angles. They had seen the station. They had seen the power signatures. They had not changed course, which meant either they did not know what they were looking at, or they did not care. Dale brought the weapon system to active status. The board lit up in a way that felt less like switches throwing, and more like something opening its eyes. Every system had a warm-up state he had studied in the manifest, a pre-fire confirmation that the targeting architecture needed before it would release to active engagement. He ran through the confirmations in order, no hesitation. The same way he ran a drive diagnostic, with the particular focus of someone who had spent a week learning a thing precisely so that when the moment came, and the knowledge was already in his hands. He opened the external comm. Incoming vessel. This is Caleb's answer. You are on an intercept heading with a Coalition-registered station. You are advised to change course immediately. No response. The range closed. Vera's voice on the private channel. They are not responding to station hails either. I know. Dale. Whatever you are about to do. I know, Vera. Make sure you know. He looked at the targeting display. The Riven ship was fast. Built narrow for speed, its hull profile designed to minimize the cross-section it presented to defensive fire. It was very good at what it did. Against standard Coalition defensive arrays, it was almost certainly unstoppable at this speed and angle. The key word was standard. Dale did not use the standard weapons. He used the point system his grandfather had described as the net, a targeting architecture that did not fire at the ship, but at the space the ship was going to occupy, distributed across a probability cone calculated from the incoming vessel's speed, heading, and maneuvering range. It was not a weapon designed to destroy. It was designed to make movement impossible, filling the intercept cone with enough intersecting fields that any course correction would walk the target into another one. He fired the net. The Riven ship's pilot was very good. That was clear from the response. The immediate course change, sharp and committed. The kind of maneuver that would have broken through any standard defensive spread. The net was not a standard defensive spread. The Riven ship hit the second field at an angle that sheared its forward drive assembly. It did not explode. It did not disintegrate. It simply stopped moving at speed, all that momentum converting instantly to spin as the drive imbalance took over, and the ship rotating like a key in a lock that had nothing to open. Dale watched it stabilize, damaged but intact. 200 meters off the station's approach corridor, spinning slowly, broadcasting nothing. He opened the external comm again. Incoming vessel. You have experienced drive failure. I am reading your life support as intact. Coalition response vessels are 14 minutes from your position. You are advised to remain aboard and await assistance. A long silence, and then a single transmission from the riven ship. Not a voice. A tone. A specific frequency that Dale's sensor mesh identified as a recognition signal. The kind used between vessels of the same affiliation to confirm identity. They were asking who he was. Dale thought about that for a moment. Then he transmitted back on the same frequency. Not a recognition signal, just his voice. Just his name. Dale Ruiz, engineer, Station 11 salvage. The riven ship went silent. Dale sat back in the command chair and let out a long breath. His hands were steady. He looked at them and noted that they were steady, which was interesting, because the rest of him was running about 3 levels hotter than he preferred. Vera's voice, when it came, was very quiet. Dale. Station crew is unharmed? Yes. We never even went to emergency stations. It was over before the alarm would have completed. A pause. New coalition response vessels are going to arrive and find a disabled riven raider with a drive failure of a type they will not recognize. Drive failure from impact with a debris field in Sector 9, Dale said. I will note in the incident log that I observed the contact strike debris before it began losing speed. That is not what happened. No, he said, it is not. Another pause. The compliance review is day 30, Vera said. Yes. You used weapon systems that are not in any coalition registry on an unregistered vessel during a compliance review period. I used unregistered defensive systems to prevent a hostile vessel from reaching a coalition station. The station and all crew are unharmed. The hostile vessel is disabled and intact, crew unharmed, ready for coalition custody. Dale looked at the tactical board. I think the legal argument writes itself. Vera made a sound. It was not quite a laugh. It was the sound of someone choosing to let a thing go because the alternative required more energy than was available. The coalition response vessels arrived 11 minutes later. They found the disabled riven ship exactly where Dale had said they would. They found the station fully operational. They found no weapon signatures on Caleb's answer because Dale had powered the weapons board down the moment the engagement ended, and the system's active signature dissipated within 90 seconds of deactivation. They found a debris field in Sector 9 that their sensors confirmed showed recent disturbance, which was accurate because Dale had released a small quantity of physical debris from the ship's storage bay into the field 3 minutes before the response vessels arrived. The lead response commander, a Kaleth officer named Seville, reviewed the incident log, spoke briefly with Vera, ran a scan of the station and the disabled raider, and filed a report that noted a hostile incursion was interrupted by favorable sector conditions and the timely presence of a coalition response. Favorable sector conditions. Dale read that line twice, and then he went to the engine bay and sat down on the floor with his back against the secondary drive core and let the ship's warmth run through the deck and up through his back and did not think about anything for about 4 minutes. His grandfather had spent 11 years on this ship. He had walked these corridors. He had run these drives. He had sat in the engine bay, probably, during some long transit between one thing and the next. Austin felt the ship's warmth and thought whatever he had thought. And then he had helped hide it, and kept it hidden, and spent the last years of his life making sure someone would know where it was and how to wake it up. Dale had asked him once why he had done that. Not the hiding, the keeping, the 40 years of silence. His grandfather had said, because the right moment had not arrived yet. Dale looked up at the engine bay ceiling. The right moment had arrived. On the bridge, the ship's systems were running their post-engagement diagnostic. All green, every system within spec, nothing flagged, nothing damaged. Caleb's answer had fired once and found its target and shut down cleanly, and was now sitting in Sector 9, warm and ready, and full of more patience than Dale had ever had in his life. The compliance review was 21 days away. Dale stood up, straightened his vest, and went back to work. There were still systems he had not fully mapped. Still authentication locks he had not cracked. Still things his grandfather had built into this ship that were waiting to be found by someone who knew how to look. He was very good at looking. He was going to need every day of the 21 he had left. Because the Riven Raider that had come through Sector 9 today had not been alone. The sensor mesh had picked up a second contact on the outer edge of its range, far back, moving slow, watching. Dale had not mentioned that in the incident log. He had noted the heading of the second contact and calculated its return vector and determined that whatever had sent the first ship to test the station was now aware that the test had failed. Something was coming. Something with more than one ship, more than one fast raider. Something that had enough resources to probe a coalition station and enough patience to wait for the right moment. Dale knew about waiting for the right moment. He also knew, now, that he had a ship that had been built by 40 engineers who had spent years making something the people who came after would need. He ran his hand along the engine bay wall as he walked back toward the bridge. "We are not done," he said to the ship. The ship hummed back. It was not gratitude. It was agreement. They had 21 days. It was enough.